Hey, we're live. Welcome to the pre-show, everyone. Glad to have you here. Let me get all set up for tonight. Let's get our God voice going and turn that down a bit so we don't pick that up in feedback. And also our recording software so we can record just the audio for the radio station. And I'm going to start that right now. So boom, there we go. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome everybody. Trying out a new lighting system tonight. So hopefully it's not too weird. Looks a little pink. I don't know about you. Looks a little pink to me. Hey everybody. So Field Guy, saw you were here bright and early. Good to see you. Barbie D, good to see you as well. Matthew Sainsbury, good to see you as well. From Barbados. And I think that's all we've got in here so far this evening. So do I look pink? Does the lighting look pinkish to you? It's a yellow light, but it's juxtaposed against the blue light. So it might give us a little... You'd think that would make green, but it looks very pinkish on my camera. So, or at least on my monitor. So how's everybody doing tonight? Yes, I am on time tonight. And he's going dark pretty soon. Pretty soon, in about 2 minutes, we go dark to launch the show. So we're all set. We're connected to the network. We got our recording going. And bada boom, bada boom. So we'll get rolling here in a minute. And last night's little crises, no repeat of that tonight. That kind of thing's never happened around here before. So that I missed a show for that. We were too late into the show, 23 minutes after the hour last night. And so it just wasn't worth connecting at that point. It's probably the camera, Master Finn. The camera in this thing, it needs to be replaced. It's the internal camera on my big, what is it that I have? This is a Mac, what is my computer? iMac Retina 5K 27-inch. It's from 2017. This computer is almost ancient. It's 5 years old. So, even though I just got it about a year and a half ago, I bought it used. So, hey, Morgan Snow. Good to see you. Iowa X. Good to see you. Did I get you? I did not get chewed out. The only thing at the radio station with Ron Phillips was he said, I just wasn't sure what to do because I didn't see it. So I had to throw up music. Instead, he wasn't quite set to go grab one of my archives, which he's all got to do that all manually over there at the radio station. So, no chewing out. He totally understood. It's happened before. Not for me, but that stuff happens. All right, here we go. Time to fly. I'm already talking into the radio show, so I'm going to throw up the intro to our show for those listening just for the fun of it. So stand by. Here we go.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. This is Scotty Roberts, and you are watching and listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey radio station. Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio. Everything that's good about Odyssey Radio, all the different shows over there. You can hear this show again while you're only listening in audio over on the radio station. You can hear this show that's playing tonight. You'll be able to hear that tomorrow as an archive. And so all throughout the day. And also welcome over to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And while you're there, like the broadcast, subscribe if you're not subscribed, hit the join button down below the window. You can join this channel and you can see the benefits that are supposedly supposed to come with being a member of this channel. And you can also, tonight during the live show, you can join the chat room over there, inhabited by fellow Intrepheads. And if you would not consider yourself an Intrephead, now is the time to take a look and see if you even want to be. And go meet all the other Intrepheads over there in the chat room. And welcome to all of you who are still filtering in bit by bit. And hey to Matt Finn, Master Finn, my first in command over there in the chat room, and Field Guy and Iowa X and Barbie D and Matthew Sainsbury. And who else did I see? Morgan Snow and others that are filtering in now. So welcome to the program. Glad to have you here. And thank you for taking your time to come on in here and be part of this program. Now, I want to complain about something right at the very start here. Maybe it's not a complaint. Maybe I'm whining a little bit. It's the kind of stuff that grates me. And it all ties into all this stuff you see out there about, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all of those being so strict with the way they govern what is said over there. And I don't know that they're really all that worried about a lawsuit. They just want to control the narrative. Now, when was it? Yesterday sometime, or was it really early this morning? I had put up just a little post over on, it was one day ago, so it might have been last night. And I said this, and if this smacks of, it's not really political, it's current events. I said, Amber Heard is the reality check that the Me Too movement deserves. And it's the hashtag Me Too. Or as my wife Rainey calls it, pound me too. She laid that one on me today, and I'd never heard her say that before, and she got me laughing. Pound me too. And so I was doing a little talking. That's all I said. It was just a quick 10 seconds it took me to mount that, and I got all kinds of people, of course, commenting in there. And I had a good friend of mine for many years. He's a skeptical friend of mine. And also a friend of mine that tends toward the far liberal side of things. Why? I don't know. He's a great thinker, but I don't know what draws him to that. Well, anyway, his response to me when I said what I said in the opening post, Amber Heard is the reality check for the Pound Me Too movement deserved. She is what they deserved. And his response to me was, said a man. And I knew exactly what he was getting at. I'm a guy, so I can't comment on abused women and what abused women have to say. And I will say this, before he made his post, I said, let me be frank. Even though I'm Scotty, I said, there are women who are truly abused and battered, to whom we should listen and believe their stories, but not a belief that lends carte blanche without investigation into the charges that are made. The lives of the people, most commonly men, who are accused can be irreparably and permanently destroyed by nothing more than a mere accusation of wrongdoing, despite the fact that our system of jurisprudence demands innocence until proven guilt, beyond a reasonable doubt. We all know that trial by mob justice, or the court of public opinion, isn't always keen to learn the facts, mostly because mob rule generally elevates their opinions above the law and seeking of the truth. Amber Heard called today's jury decision a setback for women. She was penalized $10 million and then another $5 million in punitive damages. All today's decision trial was a setback for one dishonest woman's bank account. Will this prevent women from coming forward to report actual wrongs committed against them? I hope to God not. But I do trust that the outcome of this trial and decision will help prevent women from making spurious and or false charges, as well as prevent people's lives being ruined without the preponderance of evidence and investigation into any such claims that are made. My opinion, Amber Heard deserved what she got. Now we can all move on. And so to all of this was where my friend had said to me, said a man, meaning everything you've said, so says a man. And I said, said a man who's been falsely accused himself twice, was my response. And he said, I said, if a woman lies, does that mean a man did it anyway? It's not about what sex you are, but rather about who's lying and who's telling the truth, man or woman. My friend responded, I'm sorry, man. I can understand why your experience has you assuming she's lying. Assuming was the word he threw in there. And now, how many times have we heard in the news, well, we don't have to presume this anymore or guess this anymore on either side of whatever issue is out there. If they've been through trial and either found innocent or found guilty, well, a jury of their peers made this decision based on facts and evidence. And so I said, I'm not assuming anything. A jury of her peers decided she was lying based on facts and evidence. My experience just sheds a little more light on seeing it beyond the politics of women don't lie about abuse. Sure they do. Not always, but in some cases. And I think this case is a prime example of this having been done. And then I said, you know both of the women who made false accusations against me, I said to him. That's how long I've known him. And he said, and when you make statements like the one above, you need to disclose your experience. And I was like, no, I really don't. I can make a statement and say, not all women tell the truth when they make accusations of abuse and battery and stuff like that, or rape. He said, well, you need to disclose the fact then that you've been falsely accused. Why? It has no bearing on what those people did. My whole point is that, well, and I said to him here, I went on to say, I think it's funny that in all the attempts to blur the sexes these days, that there's political reasons for not including these sorts of things, these issues of accusation and things like that. A woman should always be believed. Well, if we're blurring the sexes, why? Why should a woman always be believed? I said it's gymnastics of the imagination. And somebody else came in, a woman came in and said, Amber Heard is the reality check that the Me Too movement deserved. There, a woman said it, she said. And I said, what else did I say? I said, I've witnessed it time and time again. Oh, no, that was somebody else. And so other people have come in and said things. Now, I said something else that has since been deleted by Facebook. And this is where I have the problem of what happened. So that was all early this morning. And that conversation was taking place and people commenting. Now, what I said to my friend was, we were talking about, you can't believe women just because their mouths are moving and they're making accusation. Same with men. You can't just take a man's accusation against another man or against a woman or a woman against a man or a woman against a woman of any kind. carte blanche just because they say so. There needs to be investigation. And so in this line of talking, I said something to the effect, now I don't have it in front of me here. Here, let's see. I'll call it up so I can read it to you. And I should have had this open, and I mistakenly was remembering that was still in the thread, and they've removed it from my thread over on Facebook. They've censored me. Oh, and by the way, they put me in lockdown for 24 hours. No big shame. The problem is that they did this without recourse. They did this either because somebody reported it. I don't know who reported it, but within 5 minutes of that little threaded conversation this morning, I was locked down and censored by Facebook. And the post that I saw that popped up was, I'd show it to you, but you probably don't have to see it. I'm just looking for it here right now. Where is it? Right there. Okay, so the post said, it quoted me. Here's what I said to my friend. I said, not really. When he was talking about, well, you got to take women at their word and so on, blah, 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 all that stuff. I said, not really. Women are human animals too, just like men. In other words, we're all humans. We all do those things. Human animal. Now, I was told your comment goes against our community standards on hate speech. I was told that using the term or the phrase human animal is now to be considered hate speech. Did you know that? Do you think that the term human animal is hate speech? I looked up human animal after that just to make sure I wasn't remembering anything stupidly. Human animal is, there's titles of books in psychology, in history, in anthropology. Like right now, if I just call up and I see the first 3 things on a Google search are 3 books. The Human Animal by Tess Marlin. Then The Most Dangerous Animal, Human Nature, The Origins of War. And then Desmond, this is Eric Olson's The Human Animal, Personal Identity in the World. There's Desmond Morris, who wrote The Human Animal. So there's a lot of books out there on the human animal. And I wanted to see what the heck the human animal thing was all about. There was a TV show called The Human Animal. It was with the BBC. That was Desmond Morris again. So more anthropological and historical. And so human animal, I have never seen human animal, that term being used in anything other than an anthropological description of humanity. That human beings are the human animal on the planet, the human animal in the food chain, the human animal in many other ways. So I got put in just one day, no big shakes, but there's no recourse either. The only recourse I had was to agree with the decision made or disagree with the decision made. And that's all I could do. So I clicked, of course, I disagree. So Brianna Learman, how you doing? Her phone's about to die. Sorry to hear that. Plug it in quick. The human animal is hate speech. Furries are pure hate, says Iowa X. Matt Finn says, I've got a cat box link of his tweaking out. That's something else. Sorry. So anthropomorphic. Anthropomorphic is turning humans into animals. So maybe that is what the human animal is all about. It's anthropologic, I would say, rather than anthropomorphic. Let's see. I was looking to see what everybody else had to hear. Iowa says, they put me in jail for 90 days for the video of Zelensky with cocaine on his desk. They disappeared it, but it did not exist, so they say. So they had to let me out of jail. So there you go. I didn't comply with the censors, says Morgan Snow. So all of this just simply to say, is it a big deal in the grand scheme of the cosmos or America politic or geo-global politics? Nah, no big shakes. This is a small cog in a much greater, more tightly cogged machine over at Facebook. This is all about the simplicity with which they will penalize somebody for saying something that's way too close to what they have set in their Autobots. They have set to their bots to, I'm stumbling around this because I'm looking for the right words, the way that they are set in order to censor somebody. So they read human animal as, what did they possibly read that as? Did they think I was calling women animals? Did? To refer to men and women as the human animals? Is that hate speech? But who do you go to say, hey, dipshit, whatever you're doing over there, whatever you have this set to over at Facebook, you know what? You better untighten that screw a little bit, because that was not hate speech. So that's the kind of stuff that sends me. It gets me angry. Angry, not rageful. I don't lose my cool. I'm not triggered. I'm not beside myself. It just pisses me off that this is happening right under our noses and nobody does anything about it. Well, I think Elon Musk is still trying to a certain degree to remedy this problem in one corner of Silicon Valley. But usually Marxists have to win the war and send you to re-education camps. They just went to re-education camps. There you go. Yeah. I think that I wouldn't disagree with you there, Iowa X. So anyway, anybody listening that commented on that post after 8 o'clock this morning, this all happened pre 8 a.m. Anybody listening that posted there and wondered why I haven't sent anything back to you? Well, it's because I am banned from Facebook from commenting and or even liking posts or anything like that until about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So, again, no big shakes, but worth commenting about, because this is the control, the narrative that certain elements out there wish to control. This isn't about censorship. It's not a thing. It's not about, we need to censor this guy for hate speech. I meant to say this is not about hate speech. This is about censoring people. It's about censoring people who they've got the screws set so tightly over there on the automated systems that it will grab you and take you down for 24 hours for saying that men and women are human animals, which is a well-known anthropological scientific term that's been thrown around for 5 decades at least, probably before that. Free Scotty, says Field Guy. By the time you get that campaign mounted, I'll already be free again. So, it would be awfully nice if a place like Facebook that will go to the trouble of setting all this up to censor you for your hate speech would allow you to write a paragraph to say, please review this paragraph. And in which I would probably be banned for a year because it has, hey, dipshit, do you know what human animal is? Do you know what that means? Do you know where that's sourced? Do you realize it's a scientific anthropological term, not hate speech? Where the hell did you go to school? So, but that's what they get if they had to take comments. So they'll just indiscriminately censor you because it's their platform. They can do what they want, which is fine. But if you're going to do what you want and you've got the public invited to be there and be part of what you do, better get with the program. So there you go. So let's move on and away from that. I had to bring that up. Well, and by the way, did anybody, I just need to ask a question. Did anybody watch President Biden's gun control message to the nation tonight? I missed it. We were out, I think, picking up sandbags. So not for river flooding or anything, but Rainey's got her show this weekend where she's showing her tumblers off and all her stuff with TwoLoonsTumblers.com. And we got to put up a tent tomorrow, and she wants to sandbag some parts of the tent. So that was more important than listening to the president, which I guarantee you, unless somebody heard something that sounded really new and innovative, Did Biden say anything new and innovative tonight about gun control? All this knee-jerk reaction because of what happened. Yes, a tragedy. What happened at the school in Utah? Was it Utah? No, Old Lady, Texas. And I understand that people are outraged, that there's high emotions and so on. But now we've got such knee-jerk reaction to that. What does this administration do? They're hopping on the political opportunity to try to put yet more restrictions on partnership. And all the proponents of what he's doing are like, well, it's not really, you'll still have your guns. They're not abolishing the, but didn't Joe Biden just say the other day that he does not believe that the Second Amendment is an absolute? Not meaning absolute like the word of God and the universe and all of it, absolute in our country, in the founding documents of this country. He thinks it's mutable and it's changeable. Well, Joe Biden, if you believe, or your administration, or all the people that are pushing you into this over there, and you don't really have any idea of what you really believe, everything that's going on right now, if you want to do away with the Second Amendment, go ahead and give it a try. I dare you, and I double dog dare you. First of all, if you want to repeal an amendment to the Constitution, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to convoke a constitutional convention. And in that constitutional convention, what has to happen? You have to propose your case. Then once the case is all made and it's gone through the whole convention, you've got to send that out to the states. And each one of the 50 states has to ratify it. But you need 2/3 majority of the 50 states of the United States to ratify any change to the Constitution. So anybody out there know what was the last amendment or the last change made to the Constitution of the United States? Anybody know? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think it was as far back as it was not as far back as the voting rights for women, women's suffrage. Roe v. Wade was not constitutional law. So it was not an amendment to the Constitution. I know the DOMA Act, the Defense of Marriage Act, they tried that a few years ago, which I stood against. The Defense of Marriage Act. There was the religious right in this country, for the most part, wanted to push the ratification of an amendment or push for the proposal of an amendment to the Constitution that would say that marriage, basically it came down to say marriage will be defined by the Constitution of the United States as one man and one woman. You can't do that. That is not the place of the federal government nor the Constitution of the United States. Guaranteeing you the right to marry a man or a woman, only if you're a man or a woman, the opposite sex, is not a guaranteed human right. So it did not belong there. And I'm glad that it never got that far. So there you go. So the I don't know if anybody's heard anything about Joe Biden's gun speech tonight. And I know they were making big doings on the news about he was making his gun speech and he had to get it done and out of the way because he's leaving for the beach tonight. So literally, he's going to the beach for vacation for the weekend. So important an issue it is that he had to go to the beach right after he made this public announcement. So there you go. They are pushing it for political expediency. They are pushing it because they believe they have the emotional vote. And if they don't get this vote, you know what's going to happen? That's going to be used to say, well, see, the other side, they don't care about your children. They don't care about the safety and the lives of your children. I already heard somebody, who was it, Swalwell? The guy who was all tied up last year, they found out, with a Chinese agent, like spy versus spy type of stuff. And he came out and said, you are either for this or you are against our children and protecting our children. It's like, whoa. Back off on the rhetoric, dipshit. That is not what this is about. It's not about not caring for our children. It's about not thinking that your way that you're proposing has anything to do with caring for children. Don't chisel away at the Constitution and then turn around on the other side of your face, tell me I don't care about defending my children. So there you go. So if nobody heard it, I don't see too much comment going on. We're going to leave all this stuff behind and go into the finer stuff for tonight's show. Iowa exit marriage is done. I was at the beach and American teen girls wore less than Brazilian women. What's that got to do with marriage? My wife sometimes dresses within less than Brazilian, and but we're still married.
Really, all marriage is good for is making sure you have health care coverage when your other spouse.
You should come over here and say
has
that.
Better health care coverage.
Come over here and say that. Here, Rainey's got
I will.
an opinion. Oh, she will.
Come on,
She's got an opinion on marriage. Let's bring my lovely wife, Rainey, in to comment on marriage.
all marriage is good for when it comes to the binding contract is so you can get health benefits.
That's
it.
almost it.
And then when your partner dies, you get their stuff. But other than that, it's not good for nothing.
You get all my comic
It's
books and my
dumb.
Star Trek action figures
Cool.
and my swords.
So excited.
So I
I'm
know.
gonna stab your dead body with the sword just to see what it's like.
There you go.
I hope you don't mind.
I don't mind. You can practice. I won't be there. So, now Rainey does make a point. What's the purpose of marriage nowadays? Wasn't marriage initially a contract you entered into? And the reason the woman took the man's name was because there was ownership or a presumed ownership. And so
You were property.
you were property. Why do you think a man got a dowry from a woman? That was the payment for the man to take the woman off the father's hands, basically.
I gotta get back to work.
All right, you go do your thing.
See ya.
See you in a while. And so there you go. Well, that's on marriage. So that was my lovely wife, Rainey. It was nice to have her step in and make that. We'll talk about that as a topic one of these other days coming up. Marriage is a fancy word for merger, says Field Guy. And pretty much. And, nowadays, the big question was, I remember Rainey and I talked about it. Should I take your name, she asked, or should I keep Olson? I said, I kind of like the idea of you taking my name, but what do you want to do?
I wish we would have went with Robertson.
Robertson, changed our last name to Robertson. That's, it's really not far off from some of my ancestors.
Right? And then it merges our name together.
That's right. And it merges it puts our two names together. So the big question was, do we do that? And Rainey said, I'm just going to take your name. And now we tell our children, you don't have to, our daughters especially, you don't have to take a man's name. That's totally up to you. It's your decision. If you've got a good reason for it and you're okay with it, you don't even have to have a reason. You can just say, I'm just going to do it this way. Well, go right ahead. My daughter, one of my daughters, who's 30 years old now and is very liberally open-minded and all of that, she took her husband's last name. Why didn't he take hers? I don't know. That's their private business. But the whole point I was making initially about marriage was I do not think marriage should be defined by the federal government. It should not. If anybody has a right to define that, it's the states. And Rainey said that's right. So the states can put restrictions on marriage and so on, not the federal government. Or depending on the church you get married in. It could be a religious thing too. So Steve Clark says, when Jeannie and I were married, I thought about taking Jean's last name. There you go. And it's done. It's all about what you want to do. I don't think there should be a hard, fast law on that. So Steve Clark, showing that was ratified back in. Not sure what you meant. You said that in all caps, but I'm not sure if there was something else you said prior to that, Steve Clark. But we're going to move on from this topic because we're about halfway through the show. And I want to we're more than halfway through the show. I want to get to our topic tonight with Marcus Aurelius, only because it's a great topic. And we started it out the other day. And it's a phenomenal topic for us to be talking about. And if I can get it open here, there we go. And we left off, we were just giving a little history of Marcus Aurelius. And I think the history is important because it lets us know where he came from when he was writing this book. His book, The Meditations, was all about, and still considered today to be one of the finest books on life and living that still exists from 2,000 years ago. And, the Bible was written 2,000 years ago and further back and a little bit after. So it goes through, and I'm drawing from this guy's book, by the way, the guy who re-edited Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. And I'm reading some of the background that he gives us. He's talking about Rome. He's talking about Marcus Aurelius and his family. He's talking, I'm just going to pick it up here, where he had said that in some places in the Western Empire, there were lines that could be drawn, like Hadrian's Great Wall that stretched across Britain. This was his grandfather, Hadrian, who had done this. And it was intended to secure the empire's most distant frontier. Under Antoninus, it had been briefly superseded by a second line farther to the north. But these fortifications were impracticable on the continent. And then there was that threat that you could do it in Great Britain because you could go almost from shore to shore in that narrow spit between the North Sea and the Irish Sea. So all of this stuff was going on around him. Much of the remainder of the reign would be spent on intermittent warfare, first in the so-called Maricomnac Wars of the early 170s, and then in a second campaign later in that decade. And most of the burden was there to be borne by Marcus Aurelius alone. Verus died suddenly. Remember, Verus was not really his brother. It was like an adoptive brother that was co-regent with him, as they were like co-Caesars. And Verus died suddenly, apparently from a stroke in 169. And it was really a different kind of war than the traditional campaign that Verus's armies had waged. And the conventional military, the diplomatic tactics that worked against the Parthians were of limited use. Instead, the Romans had to negotiate with individual chieftains whose authority was limited, whose reliability was in doubt. And so when negotiation failed, the only alternative was a slow and bloody succession of these small-scale engagements rather than pitched battles. And the progress of the campaign is recorded on the column erected in Rome to commemorate the close of the Marcomannic Wars. And in spite of its whole triumphal purpose, the engraved scenes that spiral around the monument, they paint a really grim picture of brutal fighting. This hand-to-hand, always bloody skirmishes going back and forth and back and forth. There was devastation. There was execution. Spiders are proud of catching flies, was what Marcus notes mordantly. He said, men catching hares, fish in a net, boars, bears, Sarmatians. And the gruesome vignette that opens Meditations is a severed hand or a foot or a decapitated head, and that this may well reflect Marcus's own experiences there during this war. And by 175, the Romans seem to have gained the upper hand, but at this point, disturbing news arrived. Avidius Cassius, who had distinguished himself as a general during the Parthian Wars, and who was governor of Syria, now served as virtual regent of the Eastern Empire. And he'd revolted. He declared himself emperor over Marcus Aurelius. And some of the eastern provinces, notably Cappadocia, remained loyal to Marcus. But Cassius was recognized as emperor throughout much of the east of the empire, and in particular in Egypt, whose grain supply was crucial to the capital. And civil war seemed absolutely inevitable in Rome, in the Roman Empire, between Marcus and Cassius. And it was prevented only by Cassius's assassination at the hands of a subordinate. Marcus was nevertheless obliged to travel east to reassert his authority, taking with him Faustina, his wife, who died in the course of this journey. He visited the major cities of the East, Antioch, Alexandria, which was, of course, in northern Egypt, but that's East. It's considered the East. And he arrived finally at Athens, where he was initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, the mysteries. Remember when we spoke of the mysteries and what it meant to be brought into the mysteries internally instead of externally. There was an external doctrine and an internal doctrine. And he had to be brought in, and he was the Eleusinian mysteries. He is initiated into this, and it was a set of mystic rites that was connected with worship goddess of agriculture. And so now in his 50s by this point, Marcus was in declining health. The revolt of Cassius had only underlined the need to make all these arrangements for whoever was going to succeed him. Faustina had borne at least 13 children to Marcus, and many of whom died young, but by the mid-170s, Marcus had only 2 surviving sons, Commodus, who was just entering his teens, and there was no reason for Marcus to continue the policy of adoption, followed by his predecessors, and there was no reason to think that he could even have considered it, because he had a son who was entering his teens. In the years that follow, we see Commodus's rapid promotion to a position not far short of co-emperor. He was consul in 177 at the age of 15. And in the same year, he was accorded all the major imperial privileges, except for the post of Pontifex Maximus, the head of the Roman state religion, held by the reigning emperor alone and for the rest of his life. Now, you'll recognize these names. If you saw the movie Gladiator, these were things that were all pretty much glorified in that movie. And the fictional tale of Maximus, the gladiator, and so on. There were characters that were a lot like these, but Commodus was the son of Marcus Aurelius, who supposedly, at least according to one version of historical events, and according to the movie itself that was supposed to be displaying those historical events, murdered his father, Marcus Aurelius, in order to gain the throne much quicker than he would have gotten it otherwise. And so the gains of the Marcomannic Wars had not proved permanent. And in 178, Marcus and Commodus marched north again. And 2 years later, Marcus died at 58 years old. He was the first emperor to pass on the throne to his son since Vespasian, a century before. And sadly, Commodus's performance as emperor didn't bear out whatever promise Marcus had discerned in him. He was to be remembered as a dissolute tyrant, a second Caligula, or a lot more like Nero, whose many defects were only emphasized by the contrast with his father. And his assassination after a 12-year reign would usher in the first in a series of power struggles that would burden the empire for the next 100 years. So this was the history of Marcus Aurelius. Was there a Maximus that became a gladiator, who was the head of the Felix legions and so on? Yes and no. Was it a true story? Yeah. Was it an accurate story? We don't know. Probably not. So this is what's interesting about the history of Marcus Aurelius. So was Marcus Aurelius, did he die, or was he smothered to death by his son, who was, what's the word I'm looking for? Not eager, not ambitious for the throne. So Matt, what does this say? Matt, you really love Gladiator, says Iowa X. I don't see anything from Matt. So Matt Finn must have said something a little further back in the chat room about Gladiator. Good movie, by the way. If you've never seen that movie, it's well worth seeing. I don't think, maybe you were talking to Matthew Sainsbury. I'm not sure. So Iowa X over in the chat room. So folks, you can join the chat room. If you're not in there now, come on over and join that chat room. and join the conversation that's going on over there. Now, getting back to meditations, got to start looking at the philosophical background. Now that we've looked at the history, the lineage of Marcus Aurelius, still, before we get into going through his meditations and all his writings on life and philosophy, we got to look a little bit at his philosophical background. And so the composition of the meditations is normally dated to about the 170s and Marcus's last decade of life. And that this was a dark and stressful period for him can hardly be doubted with all the stuff we just... And in the 10 years between the 169 and 179, he had to cope with the constant fighting of the frontier, the aborted revolt of Cassius, the deaths of his colleague Verus, his wife Faustina, and many others. And though he could hardly have anticipated the century of turmoil that would follow his death, he may have suspected that his son and successor Commodus was not the man that he hoped that he would be, or the man that he felt he had groomed to be the next emperor. In these circumstances, Marcus should have sought consolation in philosophy, and that's only natural. But understanding what he looked for from his philosophical studies, that's something totally different. His philosophical studies requires a certain amount of orientation. To understand Marcus Aurelius's meditations, which we're going to get into very shortly, in context, we have to first familiarize ourselves not only with Stoicism, or what you think you may know of Stoicism might be very different than what it was. And that's the philosophical system that underlies the work, but also with the role of philosophy in ancient life and more generally. You see it in a lot of different things. You even see it in the Roman pagans that were in the pages of Scripture. Pontius Pilate was a Roman governor. He had an underlying philosophy that he lived by in his religion, where they didn't state what it was in the pages of the Gospels. You can read between the lines. You can tell what sect he was. Well, not really a sect. What mindset of philosophical thought he was from. His question, what is truth, that he asked of Jesus, was an historically documented question that was the main part of the philosophy that he was part of. What's truth? And so today, philosophy is an academic discipline. You can go to college, you can go to university, you can become a philosopher, you can take philosophy, which is also a sub-study of many other things, professions in anthropology, in archaeology, in psychology, and all those other things. And one of the few people other than professional philosophers would consider central to their everyday existence was this academic discipline of philosophy. And while we might think of ourselves as having a philosophy of life, it doesn't bear any relation to what goes on in the philosophy departments of our universities. The careers of 20th century, 21st century analytical philosophy office seem remote from what the American philosopher Thomas Nagel termed mortal questions. The problems involved in making ethical choices, constructing a just society, responding to suffering and loss, and coming to terms with prospect of death. Indeed, most of us would be inclined to see these issues as the province of religion rather than philosophy. So, does philosophy establish itself as a religion because it, in a way, kind of takes the place of religion in many aspects for many people? It's a good question. But did you see what philosophy is really all about? Mortal questions. Problems involving ethical choices, constructing a just society, responding to suffering and loss, coming to terms with the prospect of death. These are things that philosophy was all about. academic philosophy back in the day of Marcus Aurelius. And so for Marcus and his contemporaries, the situation was really different. Ancient philosophy certainly had its academic side. Athens and other large cities had these publicly financed chairs of philosophy, these professional philosophers teaching and arguing and writing, even as they do today. But philosophy also had a more practical dimension. And it wasn't merely a subject to write or argue about, but one that was expected to provide a design for living, a set of rules to live one's life by. What's my philosophy? What is your philosophy? What's your rules for life? Are they governed by government? Are they governed by politics? Are they governed by church or religion? What do you hold to be your own personal designs for living? This set of rules to live one's life by. Back in Aurelius's day, this was a need that wasn't met by ancient religion, which privileged ritual over doctrine and provided little in one way of moral and ethical guidelines, nor did anyone expect it to. That was what philosophy was for, not religion in its day. So philosophy in the modern sense is largely the creation of one man. And this was the 5th century BC Athenian thinker Socrates, or as Bill and Ted would say, Socrates. And but it's primarily in the Hellenistic period that we see the rise of philosophical sects promulgating coherent belief systems that an individual could accept as a whole and which were designed to explain the world in its totality. If you notice religion today, denominations, if you're in the Christian religion, or paganism, or Judaism, or Islam, these are all governed by philosophical mindsets, the philosophies that you believe. Now, some may be less than others, where there's more of you don't have to have much philosophy if you only got a handful of people at the top telling you what you had to believe, no matter what given religion it is. So these belief systems were philosophies. Of these Hellenistic systems, the most important both for Romans in general and for Marcus Aurelius in particular was the Stoic School. Now, what do you think of when you think of Stoic? First thing that comes to my mind is Bud Grant. Those of you who are old football fans, in the 70s and the 80s, Bud Grant was the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, and they called him the Stoic Bud Grant because he was always pretty straight-faced and pretty hard-nosed. And so the movement takes its name from stoa, or a porch, portico. That's what it means. In downtown Athens, where its founder, Zeno, at 332 BCE, taught and lectured. Zeno's doctrines were reformulated and developed by his successors, Cleanthes, or Cleanthes, however you emphasize the syllable there, and Chrysippus. And Chrysippus, in particular, was a voluminous writer, and it was he who laid the whole foundation for the systematic Stoicism. This early academic Stoicism is the source of certain key terms and concepts that reappear frequently in the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And a proper understanding of Marcus's approach requires some familiarity with the system of Stoicism as a philosophy as a whole. And you know what? We got to leave that hanging there. Tomorrow we're going to get into Stoicism, and all of this is still built up. Now, keep in mind, we're doing this 30 to 40 minutes at a time. It's our 3rd day on it. But we're going to get going into the meditations as soon as we get through this. I think all of this is pertinent. It's prerequisite to understanding what we're going to cover in the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And so we're going to pick this up again tomorrow night and talk about Stoicism. And from there, start working our way into getting into the meditations. And that's going to take us. That's going to take us a little time too to get through those. But it's all new, fresh material. You're going to enjoy this immensely. So, folks, we've only got a few seconds left, and we got to go out. And so I want you to stick around for the captain's cabin over in the chat room. And until tomorrow night, you know what? Live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
You know, Iowa X, I think you're onto something there. I think before we even get started, we should all learn Latin. Let's have Latin lessons. We should learn Latin before we start. Matt Finn says, Madame Blavatsky is pretty well known, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what they believe. That's very true. It might take you an hour's worth of reading. Present her life on, you could cover anything about Marcus Aurelius and his past and his history and his philosophy and all of that in 4 minutes. I could splash it out there and we could rip-roar our way through this. But I think this is really interesting stuff. Maybe something we can all take on and increase our own knowledge a little bit as we talk about this stuff. So let me see. I got to cut us off. Boom, right there. We are now cut off from the radio stream. I'm going to stop the recording for tomorrow, for tomorrow's archives. And there we go. We're back. So how is everybody tonight? Hope you're enjoying this stuff. Let me know. Give me a little feedback on what you think of where we're going with this. I love being a historian. I love going through the history. I think it's fascinating and it's efficacious for us all. Let's see what's everybody else got going. Matt was talking about Madame Blavatsky. It's a great morphing of theology and philosophy into theosophy. Yeah, you're right. But these types were steeped in the mystery religions of the occult and never on the good side of history. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Matt Finn. Spell that one out for me. If they were steeped in the mystery religions, are you saying that the mystery religions are synonymous with the bad side of history? If I read that right. Because I would disagree with that statement. For sake of conversation. So, loved it, says Morgan Snow. I'm glad you did. Let's see. What else we got going? Matthew Sainsbury throws a lot of information up at us. An encyclopedic flow throughout all of our shows is Matthew Sainsbury. And thank you for all of that. Barbie D. 13 children, she says, and rolling her eyes. Shrooms strike again, says Iowa X. I don't know what I missed there. Field guy, my mother's been divorced for 20 years, and she still has my dad's last name, mainly because it cost way too much to legally change her name back to a maiden name. I thought when you got a divorce, though, that you could just take your name back. It cancels the marriage contract, and you can either decide. I think when I was divorced from my wife back in, 21 years ago, 2001, Abby, Bryn, and Sam's mom, she just reverted back to her maiden name. I don't think she had to pay anything extra to have that done. It was just part of the divorce decree. So when your mom was divorced, she could have taken her maiden name back right then and there unless she just didn't want to at the time. And to do it after the fact, it can cost you some money. That's very true. If that's what you're speaking of. Iowa X's mystery religion initiations, they took mushrooms at some points. Probably. I don't know exactly what they used. There were ayahuasca types of things that were going on. Hallucinogenics, I think, were put into play. Plenty of wine, says Iowa X. Yeah, probably so. So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoy learning about this stuff because it lets us know a bit about philosophy. It lets us know a bit about what's going. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. I didn't do this during the show because we just didn't have time to do it. But those of you who are still here, I'll give you a sneak peek of some of what Marcus Aurelius had to say. And I'm just going to jump way ahead into his meditations. This is the beginning of book 5 of Marcus's meditations. Listen to what he says. I haven't read this particular passage in a long time. Here's what he says. At dawn, when you have the trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into this world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm. But it's nicer here. So you were born to feel nice? Instead of doing things and experiencing them, don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants, the spiders, and the bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can? And you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? But we have to sleep sometime, too. Agreed. But nature set a limit on that, as it did on eating and drinking, and you're over the limit. You've had more than enough of that, but not of working. There you're still below your quota. You don't love yourself enough. Or you'd love your nature, too, and what it demands of you. Perhaps people who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. And they even forget to wash or eat. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for engraving? The dancer for the dance? The miser for the money? Or the social climber for the status? When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts. Is helping others less valuable to you, but not worth your effort? And that's some interesting philosophical questions right there. And Iowa X orgies a few, but they were improv. Matthew Finn says you can read all about the Nazis and the occult, or read all about Albert Pike and Aleister Crowley. Yeah, you can. Those aren't necessarily what Marcus Aurelius was all about, though. So I understand your point, Matt, without knowing exactly what you're getting at with that. You said Madame Blavatsky also wrote the book, The Secret Doctrine, in which she expounds her root race doctrine. Yeah, this is where Hitler drew his Aryan race stuff. Was out of Blavatsky's teachings, which came out in the, not just Theosophy, but beyond that. What was Hitler part of when he was a younger man? And I can't think of it. And he turned it into a political movement, or pulled a lot of his political doctrines, really bastardized them out of those movements. The dominant race theory, the Aryan race, really started with Blavatsky. IOX says the Germans and the British were obsessed with magic with a CK. The Nazi just borrowed a lot. Scientology also. Yeah. So Marcus Aurelius, he goes on. I want to read a little bit more of this. Number 2 in this 5th chapter, this book 5, he says, to shrug it all off and wipe it clean, every annoyance and distraction, and reach utter stillness, child's play. Number 3, if an action or an utterance is appropriate, then it's appropriate for you. Don't be put off by other people's comments and criticism. If it's right to say or do it, then it's the right thing for you to do or say. The others obey their own lead. follow their own impulses. Don't be distracted. Keep walking. Follow your own nature and follow nature along the road they share. You know, it's something he says here, which I've said to my kids many times and other people in political arguments and things that have come up along the course of my way. If it's right to say or do, then it's a right thing for you to say or do. Meaning, what was the kid's argument? Well, why did you do that to your brother? Well, he did it to me first. I said, well, you're having a problem with the fact that he did it to you, saying that it was wrong behavior on his part. That's why you're tattling to me. But then, even though that was wrong behavior for him to give to you, you are now telling me you just did the same thing to him to get him back because he did it first. Yet you're still tattling to me about what he did, saying he should be punished for what he did. Well, why shouldn't you? And so I would use the thinking was, if it's wrong for him to act that way, it's also wrong for you, which is the backwards way of looking at what Marcus Aurelius said here. If it's right to say or do it, then it's right for you to say and do it. Same thing, if you're going to accuse somebody of doing something wrong, then it doesn't change what's right or wrong. You need to still live by what is right, no matter if the other person wronged you first. It's wrong for you. Got it. Is what Barbie D says. Yep. And are there any absolutes that float around in there? All I'm saying is that if you're going to make a point of somebody else or be in an argument with somebody and tell them you're wrong, but you're going to do the same thing you just decried them for, then you don't really believe what they did was wrong. It's not a core philosophy of yours. It's something to argue and bitch about. So if it's wrong for them, it's wrong for you too. If it's right for them, it's right for you, it's right for them. Most people adopt this philosophy of it's right for me, but wrong for you. You do it, I can decry you for it. If I do it, I have a different approach, so it's right for me, right? Wrong. Matt Finn says, I believe they found their information that led to scientific breakthrough in Tibet or India. Oppenheimer himself was obsessed with the Vedic texts and quoted it when they were talking about nuke bombing. Yeah. It's very good. Hitler had something called a mandrake, so I heard. It's a plant, isn't it? It's a root. Oh, you're talking theosophy. Got it, Matt. I got it. I see what you're saying. So anyway, there we are. And that's all I got for tonight. I'm not super tired because I fell asleep for a couple hours this afternoon. So, but what? So, but
Are you done already?
I'm almost done. Yeah. Oh, I'm done with the radio show. Is over. We're just doing the what? Huh? What are you saying to me, woman?
I'm not talking to you.
Oh, you're not talking to me.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you are.
What?
Women are confusing.
You're confused.
So, I was going to show you guys. This is what some of the stuff she's doing. She's preparing for her show that she's doing this weekend. Now, you've seen some of these things that she's done before, but she does the tumblers, but she's also doing these, doing the coffee mugs like these, that you can, the light just blots everything out. I hate that. But she's got some in here she's got some pretty benign ideas. These are, oh boy, that camera certainly does not. Hey, Rainey, could you turn on the overhead, please? That might help a little bit and brighten things up. Oh, it burns us. But, stuff like that she's doing on ceramic mugs. And it looks really nice. They're really sharp and clean. And this is one of my favorites. She's got the adventure pugs, whatever they are, the big axe and the swords and all of that. I thought that was kind of fun and cute. But she did some of my Star Trek ones too. Oh, like here's Kirk. That's from the Star Trek tumblers I had done up. You can see those look pretty darn cool. So she put those on mugs. That actually isn't the design I did for the mug. This was for coasters, which she does these coasters like this. And so we put some of these images on coasters. But there's a couple in particular that she did that I thought were really cool. Okay, I did this one up. This was for a coffee mug. I thought this was fun. This is, I put Spock. That's the Spock I illustrated digitally in Photoshop and was part of the big tumblers. So he's on the ceramic mug. And then I've got, you can almost see it on the camera there. Well, you can see Spock. But then the Enterprise goes around the bottom, streaks across the. You got the little insignia, and see it's so hard to see on this camera. But then there's this quote of Spock's from one of the episodes, the original episodes. He says, "I see no logic in wanting to worship a deity that demands you live in a perpetual state of fear." So we put that one on the Spock mug. Coffee mug, and these things are really, really pretty. The camera doesn't do it justice, but the colors on these are so rich and pretty on that glossy white ceramic mug. I'm just showing these off. This is the stuff Rainey's doing, and she's bringing these all to her show, and hopefully we'll sell out of them. What else we got in here that's kind of cool? She's got all your typical stuff. Buffaloes and things like that. Wander. I was looking for the devil one because I thought, oh, here we go. She's son of a patriot and daughter of a patriot. And these, you can get these on my Etsy page if you want to get them, my son of a patriot stuff. But I did these up just for these mugs. So I thought they'd be fun. But there you go. There's the son of a patriot. And again, this camera doesn't do much justice. But they look really pretty on these mugs. Really nicely printed on there. And there was one in particular I wanted to find just because I thought it was a fun mug. We got Bigfoot ones. Oh, here it is. This is the Not Today, Satan. I like this one. I thought that was fun. Not today, Satan. And that's on, of course, both sides. So you can see it and you can show it. So that's what she's been up to, and she's been doing tumblers out the ass over the last week. Just tumblers, boxes full of printed tumblers that she's bringing to the show, and all of that stuff. So, oh, she made all her cotton candy too. If you remember, she's got the cotton candy machine and has a little company, Rumpelstiltskin Spun Candy, and so we did a bunch of labels for those. She got those all in the Tupperware, the giveaway kind of Tupperware tubs. She can peel that stuff out and eat it. So she had the kids making that all up the other day. So we have child labor, slavery going on here at home. So, oh, hey, Michelle Cannon-Free. Good to see you. Glad you made it in. Thank you, Matthew Sainsbury. They are nice mugs. She did a good job on them. And Vril, Matt Finn. Vril, we talked about that a few years ago on when we did a big thing on theosophy and Madame Levinsky and all that. John Ward and I on Intrepid Radio back in the day, 2013, 2014, 15. And so we talked about Vril quite a bit. And even the Nazi hunt for Vril. Very interesting topic. I believe in the 2020s, the deity is the TV. It's the TV or its devices. That's for sure. Anyway, unless anybody's got anything else, we may wrap this up for tonight. What's the link again for the tumblers, Scotty? It's 2 Loons Tumblers. And it's the numeral 2. www.2loonstumblers.com. Just like that. Yeah, the Thule Society. That's it, Matt Finn. That's what came out of Theosophy. That's Hitler was part of that Thule Society. And at least in name only, he may have just been using it for politics, but he seemed to practice some of the stuff that they taught. So you can go to 2 Loons Tumblr, see all of Rainy's stuff over there. And it's not all up there. You can also go to Instagram and go to 2 Loons. I think it's 2 Loons Tumblers. Might be an underscore in there somewhere. Is there an underscore in it, Rainy?
No, it should just be 2 Loons somewhere.
I think you can just type the numeral 2 and Loons and Tumblers, and then it's probably going to look. Yeah, it looks it up. You put the spaces in there. Type in the search 2 Loons Tumblers, and boom, it'll get you over there. You can see some of the more recent stuff she's done. Oh, that hasn't been updated for a while. Done a lot of stuff since that. I think one thing that puts Rainy's company with the Tumblers apart from a lot of the other people we see that are out there doing it, she has all these people that she associates with that does is they just pull other artwork down. We create a lot of our own artwork, and that's where I come in. I'm a slave to 2 Loons Tumblers. So we do a lot of that. Yeah, please do, Barbie D. Thanks a lot. There's some fun stuff in there. And I think that's all I've got. For like the 5th time I've said that now. I think we're going to wrap it up. It's 10:17, and it seems like it's been a lot longer since we ended the show, but I want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate what you do here. And we'll be back again tomorrow night, Friday night, with our final show of the week. We'll see where we'll go. If we'll continue on with Marcus Aurelius, or if we'll jump into something paranormal for Friday night. The typical freakish Friday. We'll see. And so all of you, thanks for being here. And we will see you. Thanks for being part of the Captain's Cabin for about the last 20 minutes or so. And we'll see you again tomorrow night. Thanks a lot. And you know what? Live long and prosper.